My name is Mark Dupuis. I'm an assistant professor of cybersecurity at the University of Washington, Bothell, and I'm actually one of Barbara's former students. I'm also the director of human factors for Center for Information Assurance and Cybersecurity and co-chair of the conference. So one thing I wanted to say, and something that excited me yesterday a little bit, was kind of hearing about the BLT. I kind of like that analogy. And so I've taught in all areas, behavioral, the law, legal side, policy, as well as the technology side of things. And I think it's so important that we're addressing each one of these here today. And my main research interest is the human factor side of it, but I can't fully understand that, and none of us can fully understand our main area unless we understand the whole. So I really like that analogy. I'm right now pleased to introduce David Shaw, who's the CEO of Global Business Analysis, and he's going to shed some more light and share some more of his experiences with us to help, again, paint this complete picture. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. I'm looking forward to today, and I want, first of all, to applaud all of you who made presentations yesterday, and those who are not here that made presentations. You really set the bar very, very high, and I hope I can go ahead and at least get to the point of content where it'll be interesting for you. And today's going to be kind of like taking a drink from a fire hose. So in essence, I'm going to be putting a lot out on the table for you. We're going to be talking about cloud computing, a little bit about myself. I've got, about 75 years on this earth. So I'm an old guy, but yet I've been in the business now for about 50 years. And I've got a lot of experience within the technology area. We started out, by the way, I'm a fighter pilot in the Air Force, 20 years. Instructor pilot, I'm combat, I've got a year of combat in the F-4 Phantom. And I did a lot within modeling simulation and training development within the Air Force for about 3 to 4 years. And so I've had several commands, and then after I left there, I've actually led 2 or 3 technology companies. It depends on how you want to measure that out. And I've been a partner at Arthur Andersen, headed up their aerospace and defense practice, worked with KPMG, and when I finally took my own football and started my own company, Global Business Analysis, in 2004, because everybody was, you know what happened to Arthur Andersen, a little thing called Enron, they folded, and KPMG imploded, and also the company called Kroll was sold to Marsh McLennan. So consequently, I know, every time I turned around, these companies folded. Nobody wanted to hire me after that. So at any rate, as it turned out, though, Global Business Analysis has been in the technology business from the product side now and the cybersecurity side for some time. So hopefully today you'll be able to go ahead and we'll generate some thought. I'd like to begin this morning with, some of you have probably seen this, a country called Estonia. It's the most wired country there is in the world today. They use it as a test bed. Estonia is very strong in terms of its development of technology, and they work a lot from the cloud. It's kind of interesting. This is a video from there. Hopefully my technology will work, and we'll see how it works.
A lone hacker can do a lot of damage, bring down a website, steal identities. But for years, strategists have been warning that working together, a group of hackers could attack an entire country with cyber terrorism.
The fighting died down as the police arrested hundreds. But as the violence on the streets was suppressed, a different kind of aggression took hold of the country. ATMs across Estonia shut down. Access to the largest bank was blocked. No one could get their money. Police and governmental communications were disrupted, and the websites of the leading newspapers were thrown offline, making it difficult to find out what was happening. Estonia was being attacked by a so-called botnet, an army of everyday laptop and desktop computers hijacked by hackers.
We saw this massive increase in the amount of traffic coming into the country across all of the international circuits that connect Estonia to the rest of the internet.
A botnet might sound like a cute name for a kid's toy, but there's nothing warm and fuzzy about it. It's formed when an innocent web surfer visits what looks like an ordinary website. But unbeknownst to the user, a hacker uses the site to secretly take control of the user's computer, turning it into a so-called zombie.
These machines will get built into a cloud of machines, maybe thousands, it might be tens of thousands of machines. It's that flood of traffic coming from these many sources simultaneously that overwhelm the one defending machine.
It's a straightforward attack. Each of the hijacked computers sends a request for a page that doesn't exist. The target responds with an error message. It can't find the page. That simple transaction might just take a fraction of a second. But when the requests come in by the millions, it's overwhelming, and the server shuts down.
Imagine you're sitting at your desk at work, and suddenly you get 1,000 phone calls simultaneously, and you're trying to pick out the one thing that you need to know for your job from these 1,000 phone calls, and the other 999 of them are just babbling nonsense at you. It gets very, very difficult to just take care of the day-to-day transactions.
The owner of a hijacked computer will most likely never know that their machine is part of a virtual army. Intercontinental ballistic missiles used to roll through Red Square. But now the armaments are less obvious.
They are our own computers, silently drafted into the world's newest standing army. This time, the bots have been mustered to serve Russian interests, and in so doing, have revealed a new capability, the power to attack an entire country.
An attack of the size of the one that targeted Estonia would have very, very little effect on a country the size of the United States. But one of proportionately that size would be crippling for us in a way that it wasn't for Estonia, because they really were prepared in their defense, and we unfortunately have not invested.
Welcome to our world. We work with this world every single day. As a matter of fact, malware, DDoS attacks such as this, that's all part of the world that we live in today. This was a cloud attack, and quite frankly, they invited it. And it's because this was a test in Estonia. Back in 1980, believe it or not, the cloud was actually introduced in a manner of speaking. This is the Columbia Tower in Seattle. We were approached by a Canadian company to come down and determine if we could go ahead and put off-site storage together for towers that contained a lot of businesses within those organizations, within those infrastructures. So what we did was we decided to go ahead and drop fiber optics down a sleeve that was contained within the elevators, and as such then wire each one of the floors with fiber optics, and then begin to withdraw data and put it off-site in storage, in the United Storage. We found, by the way, that we could connect into the U.S. West fiber optics cable that was downtown Seattle. There was a lot of dark fiber there that we could go ahead and utilize, and we had off-site through the Lion Ring multiple different sites that we could go ahead and put systems in. Well, it was all well and good. We got to the point where we had funding, we had everything, we had all of the infrastructure established so we could go ahead and do this. That would be the first cloud storage. We even had customers galore because they said, this is great. We don't have to have our own servers and everything. We can put it off on you. The only problem was a major issue. We could not secure it. Because at that time, in the 80s, token ring wasn't even a part of the process. There wasn't really good security for networks. There was not good security for data. The best we could get for a network was Novell 3. And that was the early stages of that organization. And unfortunately, we had to go ahead and drop the project because we could not guarantee for the lawyers, for the doctors, and for anybody else that was needed secure data, we could not guarantee it. So, move on to today. Global business analysis concentrates on what we call the transportation triad, the most critical infrastructure that there is on Earth today. That's worldwide, because what it has, if you look at the aviation, you look at the maritime, and you look at the land, there is huge amounts of traffic that moves cargo and commercial cargo, that's what we concentrate on E-enabled systems throughout and over the grid. If you blank out that, if you take the transportation away, there's starvation, and basically the life as we know it today is gone. So we concentrate on that. We'll talk a little bit about that as we move forward. But you can see it's all interconnected. Aviation is interconnected with maritime, mass transit, passenger, highways, freight, rail, pipeline security. It's all part of an ecosystem that is critical today for our well-being. Without it, again, starvation and life as we know it today, in terms of starvation of everything, is gone. So what do? Well, first of all, this represents, and you probably saw a little bit of it yesterday, the diagram shown yesterday is one we drew up for Boeing. This is another demonstration of that. This is the aviation landscape, hugely complex, and it has a lot of activity going on, and a lot of it is it's enabled now moving forward and in the cloud. And with that, we now find new and dynamic problems and challenges that we're facing that we have never faced before. This is the Internet of Things. Back in 1999, by the way, a Brit by the name of Ashton actually coined this term of Internet of Things. We kind of ignored it for a while. Now it's the new thing, just like the cloud is basically distributed computing. But now what we have here is Internet of Things. Well, everything is now being connected. Everything that you have and I have, by the way, is auditable. It's on an audit trail. We can go and pick it up, and it's digitized. So as such, then, it is hackable. It is retrievable from PII all the way down to IP. The 40 million plus 42 million, I don't even know how, they're still trying to make the count yet, of the OPM hack. There's a lot of data mining going on there, and I can go into some depth there. But what we're finding now is that they're utilizing a lot of that data, that metadata, and the PII to gather in and steal intellectual property from those with the SF-86, which is the form that you use to go to get your clearances. Huge amount of data on there, by the way. Everything all the way back from when you were a kid. And all of that's on there, and they're able to utilize that to get into these companies and steal IP. Billions of dollars now is going out the door just because of it. So as such then, we consider this the new battle space. This is the way we're working, because time and space in the fourth dimension, as described, is exactly where we're at. This is called the fourth dimension. It is time and space as we go through, and it is being utilized very readily, not only by nation states, but in the dark web and the cohort activity that goes on there. So, cloud computing is here to stay, whether we like it or not, whether in fact that we all agree with this, it's here to stay. These are some basically season stats, I should say, that you can kind of read through. And I think that the big thing is here, cloud providers have increased from 2007 to over half a million right now at this point, and now they're just countless. But the big stat here is the fact that you have 2016, there's going to be over $1 billion spent on cloud computing. Now, by the way, that goes all the way from the Azures, the AWS, the big guys, all the way down to the trunk, to the trunk cloud computing that's out there today. But you can see the fact is that there's a lot of stats here, but it's here to stay. And here's really from Gartner. This is recent. Matter of fact, just came off the press. Some of you may have seen this. That is one of the fastest growing, most popular IT functions. However, we've got a problem. We've got a workforce development problem that goes right along with that. We need to have better and more capable technologists that can go ahead and speak this language at the same time, speak this language, and we basically break down workforce development into 3 tiers. The first tier, and I don't have a slide on this, but the first tier is your technologists. Those are the bit twiddlers, the folks that get in there and know how to go ahead and manage the net. The next tier is the CISO and CTOs and so on. These folks know how to speak the language. The top tier is the most important tier there is all. It is your CEOs, your basically CFOs, it's your C-suite. And more than that, it is the board of directors. The folks in the large corporations that are tied to the funding and the fiduciary responsibility to manage that corporation and lead that corporation. We need to speak a common language, and right now we do not have that common language. So what's in the cloud? Well, we have PII, we know that, okay? Personal identified information. This is critical. By the way, it used to be, the fact is that your credit card and your social security number used to be worth something. Unless you have a Neiman Marcus or a Nordstrom card and a gold American Express card, you're not worth very much. They don't care about my debit card at all. It's worth probably about a dime to the purveyors of this. What I mean is there's a huge amount of PII out there today, and it's readily accessible. You know, if you look at all the different hacks that have taken place, a lot of it's out there. Identity theft is still a problem. It keeps LifeLock and the other organizations like that going very, very well. What else do we have? Well, we have IP. As President Obama stood there on the Chinese tarmac and looked at the airplane, he says, gee, that's really a great looking airplane. He was looking at the F-22 clone. How'd they get it? They got it through IP and through the various different activities and the various different suppliers in that supply chain, and they put it together very nicely. Internet of Things, you have malware, you have threat actors, you have application, you have big data. All that's on the cloud right now, and the risk comes from not knowing what you're doing. This is, by the way, and I've been reading Wired, I've been reading Gartner, and we go through on our own surveys. This is one of the main problems. People have no idea what they're doing, get into the cloud. It's a thing, it's new, well, not really, but basically it's a new technology that we're looking at and how to manage that technology. So here's some challenges. Well, the good news is we have infinite threat surfaces. It makes it more difficult and more challenging for the threat actor. Oh, that's the bad news too. I forgot to throw that out. Good news and bad news, okay? Infinite threat surfaces. That means it's a little bit more to cover. Next is the number of providers are increasing. Now, the big guys are gobbling up the smaller providers, those that have actually good talent and technology. They're trying to gobble them up to go ahead and make it better for them. Cost of services. There are financial losses. Box made a lot of money. But they also lost a lot of money. AWS, it's a very thin margin. It's a very thin margin activity. By the way, AWS just now is breaking out by itself. Used to be covered in with, and Jeff Bezos basically kept it in, kept it close to the activities that they were doing at Amazon, but now they're breaking that out so they have a better feel for exactly what the cost of that service is. And they're finding out it's not as great a revenue source as they thought it was. Well, another thing, the level of security within the cloud varies. Now, for instance, you find that a lot of your law enforcement services utilize Azure because Azure has in a security for service, not software service, security for service, they have some rather secure activity in there, some apps in there that they can utilize. Azure does not have that. AWS does not have that, so some of the others don't. So they use that. But there's a gap, obviously, between the time that you go ahead and transmit to the time you get to the cloud, and so the air gap right there is a problem they're still trying to solve. Okay, one of the greatest security risks is the traditional network is insider threat. If you don't believe that, just look. It's 80% of the threat right now is from insider work. And I can tell you that right now. It's through, I guess, my son-in-law has a saying. If you're going to argue with an idiot, you'll be overwhelmed with experience. If you argue with an idiot, you're going to be overwhelmed with experience. Now, that means the fact is that they have a lot of experience and not knowing what they're doing. And so consequently, what we're looking at here is the insider threat is you have a lot of folks who think that they know what they're doing. We talked, and it was yesterday, it was a very good thing by Olaf. Talked a little bit about the threat of those who, just click on the phishing. The other day, I received a very unique email. It was from an individual that I knew, and it was a Gmail Gmail address. And he was sending me his resume, and I thought, gee, this is good. But then something niggling in the back of my mind says isolate it, so I did. I pulled it off, isolated it, I put a box around it, and I opened it up, and it exploded. So they're getting real smart. And so consequently, phishing is something that, like he said, even the best are going to go and click on it. One of the organizations did a test. They went ahead and did awareness training of phishing for days and days and days and days. Then they went out and then they tested it. Guess what? One of the instructors clicked on it. So it's very, very difficult today. Security scenarios, truth and fiction, there's a lot of those. For instance, they say the web is not secure. Well, it really is. Cloud security is far more secure than it was last year, and it'll get far more secure this next year. Whether you're public, whether you're private, or whether you're hybrid, You're basically going to have certain degrees of security in the cloud if you know where you're going. You know, there used to be an ad out there, do you know where your kids are tonight? Well, I'm going to put that out, do you know where your data is today? Do you know what service that you're utilizing and where your servers are? We did a trace on one of the servers at one point in time, just out of curiosity. You know where the server was? China. Right? Great thing. Beautiful. Trouble is your data is also there too and accessible. So you got to know where your data is. There's a lot of truth and fiction, and most of you know mostly what that is. Well, here's what we do. First of all, we build these moats. We do all the best we possibly can. We're still focused in on that. And then what we do is we go ahead and we put in the center there, as Richard Clark says, our crown jewels. They put all the PII right in the center, says we're safe. Well, Barbara has said, and she's written a paper on this, the fact is the probability one that you'll be breached. It's assumption of breach. You will be breached. There's just no fact, that's just what's going to happen. So therefore, we need to put a little bit more protection in being. What we do, we go through in our company, and we do a lot of research with regards to threat actors. We also do some psychology work on this, and basically we start out with the actor itself, whether they are state, nation state, organized crime, whatever the case may be, go down for the motivation. The motivation is the number two factor here. Whether it's insider threat or out, whether it's anger or whatever, it's external. And then we go through the target, impact, methods, and then the resources that they use. So it's a cascading effect, and it works very well. Then we build around that. We put together what we call a threat actor profile. That's for every single one of our companies that we work with. The threat actor profile basically takes and we put swim lanes together. And then we put a heat map on the side here as to basically what the threat may do with that particular company as far as our risk assessment goes. So we spend a lot. So the flows are developed for each external threat, each system being evaluated. Well, what does that mean? Well, first of all, some of the risk management and cloud security, here's some of the traditional things that we've looked at. First of all, most everybody puts frameworks around it. You've heard the NIST frameworks, the 800 series, everybody reads that. That's great. You have CANSO, which basically is more of a universal type thing. ISO, we like ISO a lot. Why? Because it kind of covers the entire landscape, whereas NIST is pretty much focused in. Those are good frameworks. Then there's the policies. We spent a lot of time, we've talked about this today, put a lot of rigor and energy into that, and that's great, it really is. Because the next thing is then we build processes for security. These processes are basically, put a lot of rigor into those processes. And then we draw maps, we draw everything we possibly can. As a matter of fact, we saw in one of the secure maps, it was basically an incident response plan. It covered, it was basically dotted out. It was basically the little boxes and arrows and things like this. When they finally got through with it, you became exhausted at the second tier because, quite frankly, getting to that point took a lot of rigor to get there. We build these processes because we become bureaucratic in that process instead of responsive. Well, then we do awareness training. We do that until we're blind. We basically get people in a room when we say, we beat them to death with what? Be careful, don't click on this. We glue their USB ports so that they can't use it. We do everything we possibly can to keep them from doing dumb things, okay? And then we reach out and do it ourselves. We put critical data on personal computers and take it, and we go to a hotel, go to their wireless on their hotel, and it's exposed to everybody. And you don't think people capture that? They do. We know that. Okay, then there's the cloud security tools. The tools are nothing more, and this is something of a fact, tools are nothing more than a sandbox for the hacker. Basically what it is, it could be a game. If you make it hard enough for them, put it in depth, honeypots and the other tools. Most corporations, by the way, have around 70 to 80 tools that they utilize. Most of them are basically there, they're dormant, and you have no idea what the synergy of those tools are. It's kind of like whack-a-mole. You take and you hit something over here, another thing pops up over here. So it's a constant work. Good job, security. Well, if you look at this Venn diagram, you have the threat, you have the asset, and then you have vulnerability. Now, in the aviation world, we use the V word and got fired. You don't use the V word, the vulnerability word, around the aviation. Why? Because it takes 3 years or more to certify an airplane. Every single line of code, everything has to be done. The FAA regs are extremely rigorous. You know how long it takes to decertify an airplane? 30 seconds or less. Okay? So what happens here is this. We used the V word, they said, oh man, lock everything up, quick. And so they did, and we walked out. And I said, as I walked out, I said, by the way, I don't care what you call it. You can call it a rat, you can call it a vulnerability, you can call it whatever you want to. The result is the same thing. Well, again, my son-in-law's saying came, and they're not idiots. They're not at all. But basically, I was overwhelmed with experience. And so anyway, what happened was, would you come back, please? I think you guys may be right. So at any rate, we're back in there. We have been now for 3 or 4 years, and we're changing the entire culture because of it. You got to be bold. Okay, so what's the warrior garden look like in the future? Gee whiz, I don't know. You know, it's going to be the little guy right there in the back, quite frankly. Hey, back, I'm over here, okay? So we're trying to instill a new paradigm right now. A whole new paradigm, a whole new effort here. More rigor. You've talked about it today, yesterday, I mean. First of all, here's how we go about the process. We do rigorous risk assessments. We go ahead and we determine within that entire ecosystem what we need to target, whether it's loadable software in the airplanes. If we're at airports, is it going to be, and quite frankly, the most vulnerable today, if you go there, the wireless networks they have. They have GateLink, GoGo, and a lot of others that are out there today. Do you know that with all of that, the airplanes today, basically download, upload data, and we talked a little bit about that yesterday. Well, what happens is, with the electronic flight bags, the crew bags, everything else, a lot of stuff's wireless. Maintenance laptops and things like this. Well, that's okay. And there's a lot of security that goes around it. But the thing is, what are some of the risks with that? So we do a very rigorous risk assessment. We put it into a use case. These use cases are modified, they're case studies, but basically we capture all that data. We do a lot of research, about 2 to 3 months worth of research, and understand who the stakeholders are, understand these integrated process teams, and then the next thing is we do exercises. We do wargaming with these companies. Whether it's airlines, whether it's airports, whether it's manufacturers, these wargaming sequences are absolutely superb. Barbara's participated in them. Barbara's been a thought leader on this. Barbara's she's part of our group, and she basically represents the University of Washington coming to these and does a beautiful job in helping us, helping the teams understand some thrust in terms of training. But we do these rigorous exercises, the brown paper, very low tech, but very, very high value. The gotchas and the aha moments are replete, and they come back and say, I've never talked to you before. This is great, and they basically lock hands, lock arms. They know where they're going now because they know the fact is no longer siloed. It's now a horizontal problem. We bring in, and the C-suite, at least up to the CTOs and higher now are beginning to look at this and saying, and they're briefed on this, and they're saying, wow. Okay, and then they determine what needs to be done. Not just buying more tools. We do role-based training. How many here know what role-based training is? How many have done it? Role-based training is superb. It really is. You look at the role responsibility and the relationship that individual has or that group has, and then you get this group together and you determine what training is needed. It's not just hammering down verbiage that may not need anything. They actually go through and they do this role-based activity that brings them up and they understand. Certifications are another thing too. Sent a lot of them through the schools there at University of Washington. Get certified. There's ISACA, AIAA, ATC. There's a lot of different organizations we're part of, and each one of them have their own certifications and so on like this. But we recommend that people go through and keep this up, keep going, keep reading. We do huge amounts of research every single day. We do research and development. I can't go into all of what we do here, because a lot of it's majorly proprietary, but we're working with organizations, some three-letter organizations back east, that are helping us understand, and we're helping them understand where we need to go. Not only is cloud security, but generally, and the biggest vulnerability today, what is it? Mobile devices, hugely. You know, your phone, the average Android phone, the S5, has 8 CPU cores to it. 3 of them or 4 of them are trusted, depends upon how who you have, and the rest of them are open. iPhone now has its own trusted core, which is great. They just put it in there in the iPhone 6. But then again, your laptop, your PDA, whatever else you have, your tablet and so on like this, highly vulnerable, highly vulnerable. The most, or the best, and Boeing uses this, by the way, is your BlackBerry. RIM seems to be the most secure. See, you've got BlackBerry. See, that's good. But the problem is it doesn't connect with anything. That's why it's so secure, okay? You can make calls on it, and it doesn't have a whole lot of apps to it. Oh, by the way, we add more apps and more apps, more apps. All of them would have viruses. You just invite it in there. But RIM's good. But basically, iPhone is next, and then you have Android someplace down here clear down here, somewhere down there. Okay, I have an Android phone, by the way. I don't care because I don't put anything on it. I love people, by the way, who go through and they take pictures of their checks and they send it over and basically make deposits that way. That's great. I'm sitting there saying, wow, this is really a neat thing. Part of the Internet of Things, you know. You know what's happening? The big air gap here. The neat part about it is it's there. And so consequently, people can pick that up. Oh yeah, they do their banking on there and everything else. You know why? Because it cuts down on the cost for the banks. You do everything electronically. It's a good thing for them, bad thing for you. So that's part of what we do. Encryption, big thing. How do we encrypt? By the way, encryption is another toy, it's another tool that we use, but also it is very vulnerable. Encryption is very easy to capture. Another thing, new dynamic tools. We need to go ahead and bring those up. We need to continue the cycle of tools. We're working on those now. New tools come up every single time. As one fades out, and I won't name any right now, but basically some of those tools have been around for a long time. They're updated somewhat, but not necessarily are they totally viable today. And then incident response. It's going to happen. Remember probability 1. Make sure the incident response plans are there and make sure they're viable. We did a test on one of them and they said, we'll just go to plan A. I said, okay. And they sat down during the exercise. I said, no. Barbara said, go to plan A. Go ahead and do that. Go pick it up. Picked up the phone. Plan A hadn't existed in 2 years. Individual was even gone. We'll go to plan B. That didn't exist. There's no plan C. So now we're doing an entire incident response plan for this corporation. We're going through, we're exercising, we're going through the risk assessment, we're going through the whole process, and it's great, it works. So, what do we do here? So this is a Dave Shaw. Risk management and cloud service security is a culture, not a cult. It is a journey, not a destination. If we keep that in mind, we will in fact be able to progress forward and cloud security will become a reality. This just gives you a quick brief. It was mentioned yesterday by Bill Bonney about the Hooter Loop. We utilize this as a training for the decision process. Maybe look complicated, but it's very simple, very direct. As a fighter pilot in combat, I did air-to-air. I chased MiGs around, I dropped bombs, things like this. You basically loop through the decision process in seconds, in milliseconds, because it becomes second nature to you. Cybersecurity and security demands that because, quite frankly, the threat actors are faster than we are. So here we have kind of a picture of it. By the way, there's another issue here, too. I wish Scott David were here. There's another issue here. It's called the Negligence Bar. Brand new term. You know what that means? That means if you're below the negligence bar, you're going to go to jail, just like some of the folks there at Target are under indictment right now. That means the insurance companies, Lloyd's, Travelers, and others that are now trying to figure out from their actuarials how to go ahead and measure security from a cyber standpoint. They still don't have all that down yet. But yet, they're stating the fact is that if you do not meet this bar, we're not going to insure you, or else your board of directors are going to go to jail, or they have a fiduciary responsibility that's going to be bad. So you got to keep above this negligence bar. It's a fuzzy logic, but it's still there. So anyway, you can see right down here, be paranoid, be vigilant, and be proactive. It goes right along with what we talked about before. So here's the way forward. Okay, first of all, as industry, this goes to the first line right down here, talks about what? It talks about workforce development. Here we go here. An industry races towards innovation. We need to have professionals that not only can speak the technical language, but they can also speak the C-suite language. They can go ahead and translate. This is a demand right now. Barbara's courses and MCL courses and the other courses she's taking here at University of Washington, that's exactly, and Bothell and all the other places too within the University of Washington campus areas. We're talking about a language that needs to be universal. Not just technical speak, it needs to be something you can understand so that the CEO eyes don't glaze over when you sit down and start talking to him. The most valuable person in the future is not going to be your technologist. A person who can just be a bit twiddler is going to be a commodity in the next 5 years. The most valuable resource is going to be, and mark my words, is going to be an individual who can understand the technology and at the same time can understand the demands of the business, the culture of the business, and speak to that in terms of cybersecurity in language that everybody can understand. Most of the C-suite are my age or below. Okay? We hold all the money. Well, not me, I can tell you that right now. They do. Okay. But they're seasoned, not through technology, some of them are, but most are engineers who have not even gone there yet. Next, we need to shift our cyber training and education focus from technical to a broader focus that basically our nation's integral systems from a global perspective. I was with Senator Cantwell, and she was sitting there. They were talking about some problems here. And I raised my hand and said, you know, Senator, I realize what Congress is trying to do. I realize what we're trying to accomplish. But you need to think globally. Today, we're no longer a nation state isolated. When you pick up the phone, my team, by the way, is in London, Australia, clear across the United States. They're all over the world. We connect very easily, very swiftly, and we talk about it every day. So we're a mobile, but basically, it's a new career direction for everybody. Lastly, we need to create a robust understanding of defense resilience, not just cyber resilience, but defense resilience, and then be proactive, a keen awareness of how to combat the asymmetric cyber threat. Otherwise, we need to be proactive, as we talked about before. That goes to that previous slide. So, the bottom line, we're all at cyber risk. And I'm going to read this so that we all get it. We're all at cyber risk. Therefore, we are invoking a process that is dynamically cooperative to create resilient defense, and in so doing, seizing the initiative to create an innovative protection of our critical infrastructure. Okay, when I say critical defense, we've got to have that. The proactive activities right now are very secure. They're secret, highly, basically we can't reach out and do some of the things that our national assets are doing, NSA and others. But we can put up a good defense by virtue of protecting our data. So here we go, and that's it. I bring my toad up. Any questions that you might have? Hi, Virginia.
I actually have a couple.
Thank you.
As a former
Yep.
about, I guess people don't want to share it, of course, about unknown. Why we miss things.
Yeah. It's, Virginia, matter of fact, that's an excellent point. That's a critical point. During our exercise, by the way, we keep asking the question, what don't you know? Who should know this, and what don't you know? That is really hard to get your arms wrapped around. It really is. It goes back to, and I forget who said it, I think, at any rate, what you don't know is going to hurt you. You have no idea what that is, so you have to go ahead and look. You know where that comes from? It comes from research. It comes from knowledge. It comes from a cohort activity where somebody over there may say, hey, what about this? You've got to listen to that, too. And that's where we keep uncovering things. That's where the vulnerabilities are. Excellent point. On the Snowden point, basically, it's the halo effect. Somebody says, you're good, and nobody else questions it. For instance, when I was back, I was on the Air Force Inspector General staff, and I took off my name tag and everything, went behind a series of barriers, and with the door right there, I walked right on in, and it said, do not enter, secret classified information there. I walked in, sat down, nobody questioned me, because I was in uniform, I had my major leaves on, and I sat down, and I started opening up drawers. And in the top drawer of this desk was a top secret document that dealt with loss of AIM-9 missiles over the past year. This is a long time ago, so it's all been taken care of. And I thought, we just let it go. At any rate, I said, this is highly interesting. So I put this on top of the desk, and I was reading it. People kept going by and says, hi, Major, how you doing? I said, that's fine. Nobody questioned me. Finally, somebody came back and says, sir, do you work here? No. Oops. And I said, and so at any rate, by the way, in the other room was a 4-star general. So we basically brought him in, told him what was going on. And several people are not working there anymore. But you can see the problem is, the fact is the halo effect. I was wearing the uniform, and the uniform sometimes we wear is the appointed uniform, like Snowden. Huge mistake. Insider threat. Huge mistake, insider threat. Other questions, please. Yes, absolutely. We use integrated process teams. And these integrated process teams are individuals who had never talked to each other before. Most of what we do, we silo our security because everybody wants to keep close to and basically harbor their secrets. We don't want to share. So what we do at this point in time, we sit there and says, okay, talk to each other. So we get these integrated process teams. We force them to be with each other because we know who the stakeholders are for this thing. We keep it small, but we basically start talking to each other, and pretty soon it brings up.
So the structure is
exactly correct.
you're expecting tension.
Yes, and we get it. Okay. Oh, we get it. We get it, and we ask them to pick up the phone too and talk to other folks. Basically, bring other folks into the picture. If you do not have that, you do not have security. Period. Because you're going to have gaps, you're going to have various varying degrees. So we're trying to make a culture across the point. Unfortunately, because of NDAs, I can't tell you all that we've done, but we've made cultural changes in the entire organizations because of this. New appointments, new titles, new people, cross-functional, and we've discovered things you wouldn't even believe. I mean, things that are basically will scare the living daylights out if I told you, because they did us. Barb?
Yeah.
Please.
With you're using some very
Exactly right.
Hooter Loop. If you notice the chart. observed, what you're safety and security of your environment, and you're doing your thing. You don't have looking at the civilian side, because what they have become a military. You know, the bad guys aren't targeting the tough underbelly. It's our critical infrastructure owned by the private sector, the fact that people have blinders on, the fact who called me in and said, "You'll never believe what they're talking about now." And I go in, three or four guys of this talking about stuff that nobody ought to hear. And they're down the escalator and waste their time, right? They press a button and look. But, you know, God and everybody could have heard that, and they weren't even thinking. Network administrators. Right. Those guys are in critical places. So I'm just pointing out that a guy like David offset situational awareness.
That's good. And, you know, what Barbara brought up, she brought up the term situational awareness. That is very, very critical. Basically, that's exactly what we're doing, situational awareness. And what it does, it brings in, and it basically breaks down the silos, and it basically puts everything in a horizontal perspective. And so the situation then becomes far broader and far more, I mean, we just did one not too long ago where somebody looked over and says, "You do what?" And you know, there's a real significant problem, workforce problem with that group. Wow, we didn't realize that. So now we elevated on up. They've been telling everybody for a long time, but nobody listened. But they listened to us because, in essence, we had a broader view. It is. As a matter of fact, we've used the modeling simulation. By the way, wargaming goes back to Thucydides, the Peloponnesian Wars. Military have used it all the way along. I don't know if you're aware or not, but almost all of the sea battles in World War II were gamed at the Naval War College. There was one point, as a matter of fact, I went to the Naval War College, so I can speak Air Force, Navy, and some Army. Army's very simple, just 4-letter words, don't have to worry about it. Who am I getting right now? Sorry about that. I'm just kidding. But at any rate, the story goes, the fact is that Admiral Halsey was hauled in from his carrier. During one part, they were basically going over the Battle of Leyte Gulf. And he was kind of recalcitrant. Halsey basically was a very abrasive individual. He's a wartime admiral. And so he was going through part of the exercise that they were doing. He says, "Stop." And he thought, "Oh, shoot. What's going to come out of his mouth next?" He says, "I need to get every single one of my commanders here." This is valuable because, in essence, they will see for themselves in a very low-threat environment what can happen. He brought all his people in. They sat down. We won the Battle of Leyte Gulf. Now, we're winning the battle. We need to win the battle of cybersecurity. So let's work on it, bring it home. And I don't have all the answers. We collectively can bring the answers to the table. I applaud all that you're doing. Thank you very much for your time. Good luck going in the future. Thank you.